Hello, and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I feel like I'm saying this much more calmly than I feel.
I know. Like I'm closer to my microphone today, so I'm hearing myself more, and I'm just like, "Ooh, this is smoother. I like it." So you're getting my microphone voice today. I hope
Nice.
it's
I was
fine.
just instructed in no uncertain terms to light some incense, so that's what I'm doing. So if you hear the lighter, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So I guess that's for grounding. I don't know why, but I was just told to. So here we are.
Yeah, I got a big ping to take some with me to I'll be traveling to California and staying there for like almost a week. And we're staying in like this little camper Airbnb. And it was like big, take some incense with you. You're gonna need it energy. And I'm just like, why? But okay.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's been weird. I've started using copal incense for some reason. I don't know why. It's been like the only one that's spoken to me. Like I have so many types of incense.
Yeah.
And that one is just the only one I can seem to be allowed to use for the last like month. So here we are.
That's
I don't know what it
awesome.
is. Yeah, it reminds me of going to church when I was a kid, which
Mm.
I think is part of the reason because there's like a spiritual reconnection theme going on.
I was gonna say, it feels like honestly, Lacusta from your book is trying to connect with you before you head to Rome soon. Now,
Perhaps.
this is a bookend episode to everybody who's listening to us have a casual
Yeah.
conversation about incense. Apologies, but also apparently it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
P.S. Emily's writing a book that is historical fiction where she channels in an actual woman from ancient Rome, and Emily does get to go to ancient Rome, so that's going to be cool. But also hang out longer with us, and you'll get to hear about how to actually read that when it becomes available.
Yeah.
But today's
I'm really
topic is,
excited.
oh, I know why we're basically giving each other readings right now. Because we're talking about reading etiquette.
Oh, that's what it is. Look at, so in case anyone's wondering how it feels to like, even though we're super psychic, we wait for things to pop up like that. Like genuinely, that's how we do life. Any calls we have together that's like not recorded, you all would laugh because half the time I'm like, this is what's going on with me. Krista, what do you feel? And Krista's like, I don't know. Let me look at it. Oh, it's this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, that makes sense because of this. And then they'll come in and be like, actually, that relates to me over here. But we just zoom. So you're very psychic. That's how it works. It doesn't look very fancy. It's just very flowy.
Yeah, it's I'm reading a lot. And one of the things I guess I'll mention, since it's also a bookend episode, hooray! A lot of what I've been reading is nonfiction and philosophical in nature. I'm reading the Tao Te Ching, but the Divine Feminine Tao Te Ching is the actual title. It's
cool.
like all of our spiritual concepts should be rooted in poetry books. Why are they not? Like someone built an entire spiritual faith off of poetry. And I was just like, this is the forgotten storytellers. That's fantastic. So I like that we resonate with that so well, especially since there's this concept, bringing myself back around here, in the book called, maybe I am mispronouncing this, but it's Wei Wu Wei, Wei Wei, which is to like act without acting or exist without existing. And the concept, as far as I can understand it, is that you are so present in the moment that you're prepared for anything that does come up. And you're not like over worried about what comes next or over upset about what has come already. So the Wei Wu Wei lifestyle is not my natural state, but it's something I'm working on.
As it is not many of our natural states, I don't think. That sounds lovely. I would love to get there.
Yeah.
I am not there. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah. My husband is very good with the whole idea of the Tao, and he's researched it a lot more intensely than I have. And this year, as I have so much coming, and as one of my theme words for the year going along with my astrology, so knowing that it's very viable, is visibility. I'm getting myself used to being graceful while visible. And as a Scorpio rising in Scorpio moon, that's something I've never consciously grappled with before. But like, hey guys, I'm visible on YouTube and I'm trying not to be awkward about it.
I'm trying not to be awkward
Failing.
about it. No, not failing. I think you're doing great with it, to be totally honest. I think it comes a lot more naturally to you than you give yourself credit for.
Thank you.
Stay incense. Don't be that way. Okay, we're good. I finally got it lit. We're good.
I was gonna say, it looked
Took
like
me
you
a
just
second.
stuck your incense in Harry Potted. By the way, Emily's
I
potted.
reached through Harry Potted
Okay.
and put it in its little turtle holder.
Gotcha. Okay. So first of all, I love that you have a turtle holder. Second of all, we need to get ourselves on track here. I feel so bad. Like, hopefully this
So,
has been really valuable for worldview and mindset. We're starting into the book ending stuff, but let's talk about what we came here to talk about and
yeah.
really ground ourselves into what it is that we need to talk about today.
Yeah, so we put up a poll for our patrons. Again, if you're not in the Patreon, we would love to see you there. It would be really amazing. But they get to vote on some of our episode topics, as well as suggest them. If they have suggestions for episode topics, we add those into the poll and then kind of vote on them. We decided it was between two different options, and one actually had more votes, but it wasn't this one. But for some reason, we kept being pushed to do this one first. So we're doing this one first. It only had a little bit of margin. Don't worry, it's not like a huge difference.
We're not
And we will do the other topic as well,
Yeah.
just for anyone who's listening, because we're going to definitely hit that topic. One was money blocks. We did that one first because that one got the ton of votes, and then it was kind of between these two. And we've decided that for some reason, it felt like it was really important for us to do psychic etiquette for both readers and receivers. So whether you're getting a psychic reading or if you're trying to tune in, not even just professionally, but just kind of in general for people, your friends, your family, whatever, we felt like it was really important to talk about a little bit of kind of what to look for when looking for someone to give you a reading or to tune in for you, but also some etiquette if you are giving a reading as well, because that can kind of be a gray area. And that's not super great. And we were channeling in on it, like, why do we feel like we need to do this so much? And we kind of came to the conclusion that a lot of people who really awakened in like 2020 into 2021 are going to start kind of coming in to the psychic sphere, posting content as if they're experts, that sort of thing. And that's not always the greatest thing. Not saying that that's negative. If like you're posting that, by all means, no way, that's not a negative thing. But there's going to be some ego stuff, I think, that comes into it that can be really harmful to people if they're receiving a reading from people who are really leading with that kind of ego space. So that's what we're hoping to help with.
Yeah. And another way to really look at this is there's something to be said about sharing and learning through experience, which I think as you're coming into your practice is really useful. And social media is an excellent medium for that, to a benefit and to a detriment. Because at the same time, people who have been doing this for a very long time are trying to use social media to share what they know, what they've learned, and also to reach clients the same way as we all are. So it's really cool for everybody across the board. I think what gets stuck is this process in learning that time kind of, demands of that time where you are awakened to it. You realize that you want to learn something. It's really fascinating. You dive in and then you just start gathering all the information that you can gather. You start practicing and all this stuff, and it's really exciting. And the elation that comes with the realizations that you have in this period, you want to share them. And you share them with excitement. You share them with confidence. Social media pressures you to be confident, whether it's something that you are aligned with or not. So there's also like that little thing of like the algorithm kind of working against us in that sense. But at the same time, what we have is, you're going to want to share, which is fantastic. Do. But I like to just always cite sources so that people know where we're at or where I'm coming from. And I'm sharing my level, and I'm sharing where I'm expanding into, and I'm sharing what I know. And you really, my mother gave me this advice: when you're working with people and helping people, you really only have to be one step ahead of where they are. So what I truly believe is there will be someone who is just one step behind you who needs you. And that means that where you are is perfect for the person that you're supposed to help. And that will continue to grow the more you learn. So you don't have to like pressure yourself to know everything all at once. And at the same time, for the people who are more experienced and further along that path, there's going to be someone just a step behind them who is ready to be helped by them. It's just a matter of accepting and loving where you're at in the process so that you can be authentic and honest and be, sharing as much truth as possible.
I completely and fully agree with that. What I will say is, with this kind of energy that we're sort of picking up on, of like people kind of being like, okay, well, I'm an expert in this, what's happening. And I think this is the thing that I would really want you all to use your own discernment on, use your own alignment and your understanding on when you're kind of going into this. A lot of people are going to be presenting like, this is a philosophy you need to use if you're going to do this thing. I've already seen this happening. And it's very half-baked. Like they've gotten the gist of it, but they haven't gotten the details, which is not going to make it effective and could even potentially be harmful. And that's the stuff that is starting to come up because it's presenting it in confidence, an X, Y, and Z thing. And it's not all the way there. And when it's not all the way there, then it's not super awesome to be telling a bunch of people who are a step behind you to do said thing.
Mhm.
So that's the piece there. So as far as the etiquette for posting psychic stuff or like presenting yourself as a psychic professional, first of all, if you're an expert in something, or if you're getting close to being an expert in something, share your knowledge. If you're excited about something, share your knowledge. Just make sure you give that caveat of like, this is just as far as I've learned. This is just coming from this thing. This is something that I got from it, something in that space, because then you're actually presenting in more authenticity. It's actually going to reach the people you want it to reach, as opposed to people saying like, this is how you do this thing, and then like dying on that hill when they don't have the full thing understood. That is where the energetic dissonance sort of comes in.
Yeah. And another 2 recommendations. First rule of being an intuitive, a psychic, anybody who does energy work or the esoteric sciences or occult work on social media, do not DM anyone for readings.
Do not.
And there's multiple reasons for this. So because when your imposters show up, because I think that's going to get worse as Saturn goes into Pisces.
I know.
So
just as a quick little PSA, I do not have any other accounts other than Liker of Words and Liker of Books. That is all the accounts that I have.
Likewise, I am only at the real KristaLyn. There are no hashtags, no underscores, no periods, no years, no random things. If you see my picture with something other than at the real KristaLyn, it is not the real KristaLyn. Who knew I was manifesting this when I picked that name?
Oh my God.
But so do not DM people for readings. 1, it's icky. 2, it will help differentiate you from the bot imposters that are out there right now. And hopefully we'll get regulated soon or whatever happens. But in the meantime, that's something to just be aware of. It's happening everywhere. And it's kind of annoying, and it's really detracting from our credibility.
On that as well, do not respond to anyone reaching out to you in DMs asking to give you a reading. Don't. Even if it is someone that is not an imposter, it shows a level of unprofessionalism to invade your space in that way, that personally the energy of that is not great. Find people you want a reading from, go to their website and book it that way. That is the only way readings should be booked. That gives you understanding of their cancellation policies. That gives you understanding of their refund policies. That gives you understanding of their experience. You can actually get a better energetic sense of them from their website if you go there, even just beyond social media. Yes, their face is on their social media, but how they present themselves as a professional doing a service for you can actually be really a strong indicator of if you want to work with that person or not. So whether you're getting a reading from someone and you're looking, whether this is past life regression or sound healing or, even just like a ghost mediumship thing, whatever it is all the way across the board, please do that, because it's your own energetic filter of whether or not a person is the person you want to get a reading from. Which is super duper important.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a very virtual world. So one of the things that's really helpful is to treat social media so surface level. It's more about entertainment and information than it is about changing your life and being personal and all of those things. It would be kind of weird if it were that deep on social media. That's where the website comes in. That's where working with someone one-on-one comes in. There really is that funnel that people talk about in marketing, but that is a very conscious thing as well. It's a very useful handshake, getting to know someone tool when you're working with technology.
Very much so. So just keep that in mind. If you're on email lists for any psychics as well, pay attention to the content that they're sending out. I don't want to say this in a way that's like derogatory, because I'm not meaning it that way. And I know that in a lot of spaces people have seen this, but the new age spiritual stuff can really get people wrapped up super duper quickly, and that can really pull them out of alignment incredibly fast. So when you signed up for someone's email list or something like that, or followed them on social media, they may have been going in one direction and then very quickly pivot into a different direction. Make sure that you're just maintaining your own energetic alignment in that space by actually checking out the things that they've sent you. Like there's people that I was really close and connected with and worked with pretty actively in 2019 into 2020. And I now have them completely separate and blocked and removed from stuff, just because of the amount of stuff that changed for them over that time and the direction that they headed in with their spiritual journey, which I'm not poo-pooing anyone's spiritual journey. It is their own. That being said, there's some very toxic and harmful spiritual things out there that are not beneficial to most people. And that is things that you want to pay attention to, because if the person you're looking to work with is really going into that space, that might not be a space you want to insert your energy and your vulnerability to get a reading, because it's a very vulnerable thing to get a reading. And I fully acknowledge that. And also, if you're getting a reading with someone and they don't kind of give you information up front about how it's going to work, that is also something that you might want to ask for in that reading space of like, how does this work when you get on with someone for the first time? Because everyone does it very differently. And if they don't give you that, you kind of, the power dynamic gets a little thrown off in a lot of ways, because then you're just like at the entire mercy of however they're going to flow with it without any background information. So if they're not willing to give it to you right up front, or if they don't just start out with it, just ask when you get into a reading space. I always do it. I know Krista does it. How this is going to work, especially if it's your first time. I'll usually reiterate it, even if you're a multiple time reading client with me, which hello to all of my regulars. I love you. But yeah, that but that very much is an important thing to look out for, or to request when going into a reading with someone, because there's not supposed to be an imbalance of power. Spiritually channelingness is supposed to be like, yes, that person is doing that service for you and in your favor, but it's for you. So it's a very balanced act, instead of like, this person's a channeler and you're just receiving it, whatever. You have the ability and the right to drive that in directions you need to, or to get clarity on how it's going to work. That is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, a consultation or a reading is the goal is to restore balance in some way. It's to feel empowered. And so if you are coming feeling a lack of power, and you come into a situation where the person that you are sitting with, whether that is the reader or the client, from whatever perspective you're coming into, and they take the power, and it's not an equal conversation or a fair conversation or just a mutual exchange of energy, that's imbalance. And I think that's why you get some readings that I've experienced where 3 days later you're like, but was that as cool as I thought it was? Or was I just caught up in the moment? And so it really helps to just come into a session, whether you are the reader or the client, and just make equal footing, set the tone, set the scene, define the roles, and allow people to play their part to their fullest, whatever role that might be.
With that too, you're always allowed to ask if it's okay if you record or if you take notes. That is totally fine. Ask that to, whether you're having a reading with me, I always have those sessions recorded and I'll send you a recording of it afterwards. But whoever else, you're getting a reading with, like, you can always ask that. If they're like, no, I don't do recordings, then ask if you can take notes. That's totally fine. You do have the ability to do that. And that, again, is for balance. The reading is for you and the things that you're trying to get out of it. The other thing I always mention is, before you go into a reading with anyone, if you're receiving it, set some intentions on what you would like to get out of the reading. Ask your guides to bring anything forward, or your loved ones, your ancestors, whoever you're trying to tune into, your higher self, if you're doing past life stuff. I mean, whatever, just set those intentions beforehand, just for yourself. You don't need to let the reader know what those intentions are unless you want to or you feel called to. But also, as a reader, if you are the one giving a psychic reading or tuning in for someone, even if you're not calling it a reading, you're just doing it for a friend or whatever, set some intentions going into that too. Clear your energy, get grounded, whatever you do to like start yourself off. Some people do a lot of pre-work, some people do zero. That's fine. Just whenever you're going to interact with someone's energy, I always recommend you set some intentions, or at least say like, hey, I am doing this for whatever is in their highest and best, and then come into it with that goal in mind, or that energy already kind of curated for you.
And if you are someone offering consultations and readings, one of the ways that I set us up for success before a consultation is there's an intake form that everyone that works with me gets to fill out. So I can get their birth data when they want an astrology reading, because I will spend at least an hour kind of communing with the chart and figuring out what it's saying. But also it identifies what the person is most interested in learning and breaking through. And then I'm already on that wavelength when we get into the conversation. We confirm it at the beginning of the call that we're both on the same wavelength, especially if it's exclusively an intuitive reading. I like to give like this is what I'm picking up on immediately. Don't say anything, because I need you to be able to trust that I'm on the wavelength. And I'd rather be on the wavelength than be right. Because, okay, here's another thing that's important. Psychic shows in the 90s up to now always made it look like the psychics in the shows were 100% accurate 100% of the time, because movie editing, because TV editing. you might slip up, you might misinterpret something. The same day that Chip Coffey called me out in front of a room of 200 people as a psychic, he also made a really great analogy of how he was reading for someone and China kept coming up. And he was like, have you ever been to China? What is it about China? When are you going to China? And the person was like, no, I don't understand. It ended up being China as in the dishes, but the symbol came through as China. So this is a dialogue. You're going to get the symbol and you're going to work together to make sure. My first thing is always, does China mean something to you? And then if it doesn't, I would say, okay, for me, it might mean something like this, because this is the language that my stuff tends to come in through. And then you work out where that comes in. And I will tell you 99% of the time, it's something. But if you are an intuitive, you are trusting what you are receiving. You're laying it on the table as though it's a tarot card. And you're saying, what does this mean for us? And you can interpret it based on how you feel, based on symbolism that you know, but it may also be something specific, especially when it comes to mediumship. Those, the people you connect to during mediumship will give something that is so meaningful for the person at the opposite end of the table or the opposite end of the camera. And you might not have a clue. And it's not your job to have to be able to interpret it. You can just say what you see, which is a Winnie the Pooh trick I got from the Christopher Robin movie.
Love that. The other thing with that too is it might not mean something to your client right now. It might mean something to your client in 3 weeks, and it's important, and their loved one or their guides are like, hey, pay attention to this, right? Bring this up so that in 3 weeks they can figure this out. Whatever, that's fine. But it's not, the pressure is not on you. The pressure is not on you to be right. The pressure is not on you to make it make sense to them and figure out exactly what part of their life it is. I have a quota, and I am very clear with guides coming in, whether I'm tuning into my clients' guides or my own guides or whatever. If it's something random, you have to show me 3 times or I'm not going to say it. Because sometimes they'll be like, yeah, silver, and like just whatever. And I'm like, is that just your favorite color? Like, what is that? But if they bring it up 3 times, which again is my quota, then I will be like, okay, so something random, but your guides have brought it up 3 times. Here is this thing. What does that mean to you? Or I don't know what it means, so I'm just going to give it to you because, again, it's totally random and they're not giving me context. Now, the other thing is if they want to bring up something that is not going to be something they bring up 3 times, they just need to give me context. And so I can be like, oh, this is what they're talking about. And that way it can flow and I can understand how it's relating to the client. But you can ask that. You can stipulate that with the beings that are not in the room with you, that you're talking to in the ethereal space. That's fine.
And that being said, do not be afraid to have a little bit of silence on the call as you're asking clarifying questions. I used to do, this is how long I've been doing readings. It's going to show my age. I used to do phone readings just over the phone. And I would record on a little voice recorder that would hook up to the phone and hook up to the microphone. And then I'd have to like put it on a computer and then send it and all this stuff, or a tape, God forbid. And one of the things that would happen often, because you couldn't see each other's faces, was if I was quiet, they'd try to fill the space. So I have learned that I start a lot of my readings, especially when we can't see each other's faces, with, if there is silence, it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. I'm just having a conversation, trying to get the clearest message I can for you before I spew out something that confuses all of us. So it is okay to be a little bit quiet. With Zoom and with even in-person things coming back, we have the ability to look at someone's face and see that they're asking. And I will let my face be more expressive than usual because it's a little bit more validating and engaging for the other person. It makes them feel more comfortable and it lets them see the nature of the conversation that's going on, which is always kind of fun too. But don't be afraid if you are offering an intuitive service to allow there to be some downtime, some silence, and give the other person that same grace. You can take your time to think about it if you want to. And also we can move on to the next thing, like write this down. I take notes for my clients, especially if you hire me as your personal astrologer. We do intuitive work, we do astrology, we do coaching and all that stuff. And I take session notes. So then I will email those to you with the recording, or on a regular full astrology reading, it's a PowerPoint presentation. That way we can also, if you're someone who you would love to take notes because you're not going to listen to the whole recording to find that one thing, you can also offer little things that kind of help the people find where they were at in the reading, and that might be helpful.
Yeah. The other thing with that too is if you need to take a second and tune in deeper, just say it. Like it's totally fine to say all of those things. I know when I started out, I was really
Oh.
young. And I kept being like, okay, I don't know what it is. Let me hold on. Let me figure that, like, and like being afraid because I was now not just like continually talking or causing the stream. Like, pause. That's fine. Tune into it and be like, if they ask a question and nothing comes up and there's no response, be like, hey, I'm not getting a response to that. Can you rephrase the question? Because I don't think we're there yet. Or you can even be like, I guess you're not supposed to know right now because nothing is coming through on that. And that is fine too. You don't have to know everything. It's not on you. You're tuning into spirit, and whatever spirit's going to show you, spirit's going to show you, which is something you can state to your client up front too. I surely do. Where I'm like, hey, like, basically what I do is I chat with your guides. Whatever they bring up, I will say, like, whatever we're just asking them, and I'm translating it. This is not me coming up with these things and having to know all the answers to the universe. No one does that. No, that's impossible. So if this is at all validating in that aspect, I hope you take that away from this of like, okay, this is not about me having to know everything. This is me just translating the information that comes through. Nothing's coming through. That's not your fault. That's on their guides. And many a time I've been like, well, your guides are annoyed apparently because they're not answering me and they don't want to talk to me about this. Let's try again in a little while towards the end of the reading. So let's talk about the next question on your list right now. The other thing with that too, when you go into a psychic reading, try not to have a very specific thing that you have to have clarity on. Like if you are getting like, I need my grandma to say this word, you're not going to get it. I'm just going to tell you right now, you're not going to get it. You can ask your guides like, hey, I really would like you to mention something about this or bring up this thing or talk about this thing. That's fine. And most of the time they will. I cannot tell you. I mean, I do hundreds of readings a month. Basically, I do a lot of readings, and they will very much bring up, more often than not, bring up the random thing that the person never even asked about out loud to me, but ask their guides to bring up. That's totally okay. But if you go in with this, like, I need this to prove to me this, you're going to be disappointed. No matter who you're getting a reading with, you're going to be disappointed because that's not how it works.
Yeah. And you're blocking your own energy. If you have an
100%.
attachment for that, you're saying like, you're going to McDonald's and saying, I need Burger King French fries. And McDonald's would love to give you everything else on their menu, but they can't give you just this when you're going for that. And I think that's a pretty bad analogy, but it's going
it's
somewhere.
A solid analogy, actually.
It's going somewhere and demanding a specific thing when you actually deserve more, or when the communication needs to be more robust, needs to be deeper. And if you're so stuck on where's this keyword, you're going to miss out on this whole opportunity and conversation that is going to illuminate so much more, and almost 99% of the time, I would say, it's going to be more validating than that word you were looking for.
100%. I fully agree with that. So I'm putting out the incense. It got too intense. This is a very small room. There's so much incense. I'm like, Jesus, guides, can I put it out yet? They said yes. But yeah, I completely agree with that as well. So don't go in with that very specific thing. That's actually why I stopped being a phone psychic. I was a phone psychic for a while, because I wasn't confident yet to have my own business with it. I just wanted to have a very safe way of tuning in and reading people, which of course there isn't one. Fun fact. But I was like, well, if they do all the marketing, whatever, like I'm guaranteed to get clients basically if I sign up to be this phone psychic. And I did it for a while and it was awful because there's no way you can win. There's no way you can be right because the person gets on the phone every time wanting one answer. Usually it's about their love life, which I have no problem doing love life readings, but you got to be open to what actually comes through. But they would always come on and be like, when is he coming back? And the answer is like, oh, he's fucking not. And if you say that, then they immediately rate you bad, that you think they're not coming back, whatever. Like the unhealthy attachment that's there doesn't leave room for magic. And that's important to note. The other thing, if you're going to set out to be a reader, which I know a bunch of you on this call are thinking about that, really feel called to being that on this call. What the fuck? On this podcast? I don't know. I cannot speak lately. It's fine. I called a call a podcast last week. So now here we are.
Yeah, we're just balancing it out.
It's fine. I know a lot of you are thinking of that. Price yourself appropriately. It is a filter for the type of clients you want to work with. Please.
Well, and I remember when I was first getting started taking compensation, because I grew up in a community and in a belief system where if God gave you a gift, you don't charge for it. So there was a lot of issue for me taking compensation until I encountered someone I would consider like my first mentor, even though it was just me going to her for paid readings multiple times because she would give me great information, but also tips on how to grow and validation. You're being compensated for your time. And what this means is if people want you to have the time in your day to be able to sit with them, focus enough to be able to channel for them, your needs have to be met. You have to be able to feed yourself. You have to be able to, afford being alive. And so if you do not have that, you also do not have time. So what people are giving you is the means to support yourself so that you have the time to be there for them. It is an equal exchange of energy. It is appropriate. Back in the day, they might have given you a loaf of bread and they would have fed you for the day. It's the same thing, but with money now, we make it out to be this big dramatic thing. So just understand that it is fair to be compensated for time, which is as much of a commodity as anything else.
Also, with the compensation for time piece, just to kind of add on to that too, if you're not ready to charge money, you don't have to go out right the gate and charge money. You can feel compensated for your time by that person letting you have that practice. Maybe they bring you a latte and like you just know that you're practicing, or maybe you're just like, hey, like bring me a crystal, bring me something that makes you inspired to be connected, because that is showing your energy and your gifts that they have value outside of just being a resource for other people. If you are just purely this resource, you will tap out real quick. You will find yourself getting sick really fast because your body knows that is unbalanced.
Yeah.
And it will not be fun.
Well, and
it just won't be fun.
To build on that, when I started out with readings, but also astrological consultations, it first started out where I would do it when there was a need. And in order to practice, I would do it for friends and family. And whenever the opportunity presented that there was this need, that's how I started, because I needed experience under my belt to be able to know that if I was being compensated, I was also holding up my end. I was, experienced enough, reliable enough, in integrity enough to be able to present something that had this value that I knew I had, but I needed to understand what that looked like and to build my way of doing it. So in life coaching, when I first got my certification, there was a required certain amount of hours that were pro bono, because those were your experience hours. And so in schools, if you're studying if you have any kind of practicum whatsoever in your schooling, that's your pro bono time. That's your time of gaining experience without the compensation or the regular compensation, because you're getting the experience to know what you're doing. Then you are prepared, you graduate from that, you move into knowing what that is. And one of the ways to know, because I know someone out there is like, well, how do you tell the difference? I know when the request is greater than the time already allotted to it, that is a surefire sign, if not sooner than that, that it is time to move into asking for payment and compensation. When it's like, okay, I can do this, but that's my whole day. And that's when the time needs to be compensated.
The other thing, practice does help. Practice. It's not something that, even once you start charging, it is practice. And if you look at it like, I am still practicing with this is good, that's awesome. Then you'll feel more confident the more you go into it. Also, and this is something that I wish I had known sooner in my journey doing professional readings. Things come in trends. You are not copy and pasting from one client to the other simply because you're seeing something very similar for the two. You're following the energetic trend. People tend to have a lot of the same energetic problems or issues or blocks coming up at the same time. That's how collective energy works. So I always stress this whenever someone asks me, like, what should I think about when I'm first starting out readings? Things happen in trends. So you will find that you get a lot of the same information from one client to the next for 3 weeks. And all of a sudden then it totally switches and you're getting a bunch of random information for everybody. And then it goes back to a different trend. It comes in trends. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means that you're listening and you're actually giving the information. And right now the trend is everyone's taking on a lot of energy or X, Y, and Z thing. But that is something really important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Really important.
And we can see this with astrology because it will reflect the transits. If I could tell you the last 2 weeks, a majority of my clients have been Taurus risings because they're going through specific transits all at the same time and it's hitting them in the same area of life and it's bugging them. And so they're coming to me to figure out how to get through this. So they're filling out the form the same way. And I look at their chart and I'm like, wait, isn't this the person I just did? Like I have to double check to make sure I'm not looking at the wrong chart because, and I know I'm going through a trend. Yeah. And people who are born in the same year will come around the same time because they're going through the same life transits. Right now, I'm preparing myself because several of my clients that I've gotten recently are born in the same year as me. And I'm like, oh no, this transit's hitting. Like I can tell. So
Mhm.
I need to also prepare myself for it because we're born in
Mhm.
the same year. I have a client like right in this week whose chart is so similar to mine. And I'm just like, oh no, what's coming?
That's so funny.
Because and they'll reflect you. Whether it's astrological or intuitive, a lot of the time you will find yourself giving advice that is also meant for you.
Mhm. Absolutely. It happens a lot. And
Mhm.
then your guides laugh at you. So that also happens. They're like, oh, you wouldn't listen unless you were giving it to someone else. Look at that.
Yeah.
Which is really funny as well. And the other thing is too, if something like that happens, it's okay for you to be like, hold on, I need to write this down and pause the reading for a second to write something down for yourself. That is also totally fine. Or to write it down, be like, oh, I don't want to forget this, but right now we're talking about this, but your guides just do something at this, but me write it down. I always have my notebook. It's underneath my light right now. So I can't show you, but it's always around. So I can just open it up and be like, okay, yes, during this reading, okay, I don't want to forget this piece. So I'm going to put it over here and then we're going to talk and then I'm going to circle back around. That is totally fine. However your style goes with it is awesome. You can also ask for whatever information you need up front. Hey, what questions you have or what areas you want me to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
And then go from there. That is also totally valid. So that's a lot of information. Obviously, you can tell we've done this for a long time. We
Go
have so
us.
much like expertise to be like, hey, these are all of the things that we need to tell you. But we do want to circle back around and just do a little bit of our bookend episode stuff. And then we also have a question that kind of goes along with the bookend that we're going to answer from our Patreon as well.
Which is super fun.
So
I can't wait.
I know it's a great one. So, Krista, what books have you read this month?
Okay.
And what were your feelings about them?
So the full list of books that I'm reading this month, unfortunately, there is Blood Marked, which is not unfortunate. The other books I'm reading are like, of course, the covers are not facing me right now. Like my guides are mocking me. Like, no, you have to just remember what these are.
Yep.
I'm reading Dorotheus of Sidon, which is an astrological book, which is really cool because I'm going through a new technique from ancient stuff, which is really fun. I'm cross-referencing it with a Persian astrology translation from Benjamin Dykes. So I'm getting very nerdy over there. I'm also slowly going through the Divine Feminine Tao. But the fiction book that I took in this month finished Blood Marked. And I can tell you there is already a hardcover copy on my shelf. I had it on there before I even finished it because I knew I was going to like it. And because the momentum was so much that I knew it wasn't going to disappoint me by the end. And the plot twists, it's such a well-structured book. It definitely like checks all the boxes. The characters are all acknowledged for whole and complete beings, which is great. Like nobody's like, oh, this side something here. No, they're weaving in things from previous book so expertly. There is, I believe, another book. I'm glad because the way that this one ended was if it were the end of the duology, it would be fine. Like not satisfying ending. Yes, because it did what you would need done. Like it made sense. Happy ending, not necessarily. So this perfect way of doing a cliffhanger of like, well, if this is what I have to wait on, okay, but please tell me there's more to this and that we're going to come back around and do more. And I do believe that there is going to be another one. I recommend this book so much. Blood Marked by Tracy Dion. It's the second in this Legendborn Chronicles. I loved it. And not only was the story amazing, but also reading out of my own life experience was humbling and wonderful. This story is inclusive of so many different backgrounds, life experiences, LGBTQ+, different ethnicities, but especially the Black community, African-American community roots, different magic systems that are represented really well. It was just really great all over the place and I loved it. And of course it weaves in Arthurian lore, which is something that my English literature major was. And that's also, I met my husband in Arthurian literature. So it was really cool. And now he's going to be reading it next because he's like, wait, this is like us. So it's really fun, but it does a great job of breaking it. I like that.
Love it. Yeah. Awesome. I have been reading very largely focused on Italy this month because next month I am going to Rome. And obviously I'm writing La Custa, which we kind of mentioned at the front of it. If you don't know, it's my historical fiction about a woman poisoner from ancient Gaul who lives in Rome, who offed multiple emperors. Super fun. On the nonfiction front, because I'm writing Locusta, I read Antonia Augusta, which is really old. I think it was published in 1993. So I don't actually recommend it for a resource like at all. And it has a lot of editorializing from the author, which I kind of find funky for like a very resource heavy kind of almost textbook feel book. It's a portrait of a great Roman lady, but she's a character in my book. And everything I channeled from her doesn't match some of the stuff that I found in like the historical descriptions of her. And so I was kind of looking for some validation on that. And I got some, especially about the property she owned, because I was like, she owns more than just the one villa. Like, what is this? And this book confirmed it for me. So that was really nice. So I read that whole thing literally in one sitting. It has a lot of just pictures of places where she's been mentioned, different epitaphs, whatever. Which was really interesting, but I liked it. It's not a very solid resource on like if you're looking for something academic, but it was really helpful for me for the purpose that I needed it for. And she kind of pushed me towards it because there's not a lot of resources on her life in general. Like even her Wikipedia page is like 2 paragraphs, even though she was in Augusta, which was like a big fucking deal. There's nothing. So I was like, what is this? And she's like, there's a book about me. It's not great, but here you go. And like, there it was. I had to buy it off of thrift books because it's definitely not in print anymore. But yeah. So I read that. I reread Agrippina, which if you want to it's really well researched. It has so much voice though. I love the author of it so much. She's just incredible. Her name is, the book is not up here. Her name is Shannon, but I don't know. Oh, her other book is up here. Hold on. It is Emma Southern. That's who it is. Emma Southern. This is the other book. A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which is another book for
I
her.
love that.
It's great. It's all about the different deaths in ancient Rome, and it is very good and very funny. She's hilarious. That's a really good book, and I was just reading it as a refresher because I'm about to get really into the Agrippina heavy part of the book that I'm writing, and I needed Agrippina to come in again. So I read those two as far as the nonfiction stuff goes. As far as the fiction stuff goes, I read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, which is the story of a woman named Lucrezia, who was a member of the Medici family during the Renaissance, and she got married off to the Duke of Ferrara, and it didn't go well. I'm not going to spoil anything, but that she was a real woman who lived, and this is just like a historical fantasy or fiction about her life. It is written so beautifully. Like usually flowery prose kind of annoys me sometimes because there's just so much excess for no reason. This is not excess. This is intention and beautiful and like rich flowery prose that I actually really enjoyed. So I highly recommend that. She also has another book called Hamnet, which is about one of the characters in Hamlet, one of the female characters in Hamlet, which I'm probably going to read very soon because I think that's really cool. We're going to Florence, so I thought I'd read that historical fiction because we're going to go see literally the house she lived in, which is pretty fun. As a graphic novel, I read The Girl from the Sea, standing in line at the post office for 2.5 hours. I read The Girl in the Sea in 2.5 hours. Less than that. It was like an hour and a half. It was really good. I highly recommend it. It was a beautiful sapphic coming of age with selkies. That's all you need to know.
Wow. Yeah.
Fabulous. And then I am rereading, and I'm almost done with Angels and Demons by Dan Brown because I'm a Dan Brown sucker. It's my comfort books. They've always been my comfort books. But because we're going to walk around all the different areas in Rome, Weston doesn't have a lot of background with Roman anything. And so I was like, hey, will you read Angels and Demons with me? Because it takes place literally all over Rome. We're going to most of the locations in the book for ancient-er reasons, and the characters in the book go to those locations, but I wanted Weston to have some background, and it's fun to read books together. And if you haven't read any Dan Brown stuff, I recommended recently on my TikTok, like, get back to the things that made you excited to be spiritual to begin with. Reading Dan Brown's stuff was the first time I felt validated in my psychic and spiritual beliefs as a teenager, and I didn't just want to shove them down and keep them to the side and keep them hidden. So that is what it is for me. So I'm rereading his whole Robert Langdon series basically because it makes me feel happy. So there's that. I think that's all I've read this month.
So with that,
I read a lot.
As you can tell, some of the books that we read overlap. We read some of the same stuff. And so we did have a question about that on the Patreon this week.
Yeah. Basically, one of our patrons asked, do we ever compare how the characters look in our minds when we're reading the like similar books? And we have read a decent amount of like similar ones. And we don't really ever compare that. I think because we both speak in energy so much.
I know, like I don't do this even in my descriptions as much in my books either. I don't describe characters a ton. And I don't really regard descriptions of characters much in books when I'm reading them. I feel them. That's not to say I can't imagine in my head. I absolutely can. And like I see stuff happen, but it's very much more like ooh, I felt that happen. So we'll talk about how this felt and what this moment was like and what the relationships were and the personalities. We gushed a lot. And I think thank you for humoring me on that one with Emily with So This Is Ever After, which is right now still my favorite book that I think I've ever read. Like right now it is just hitting for me still. But yeah, we talk about it. And the cool thing I think is also that one of us will like a book and the other one of us will not. And I like that about us as well, because we are completely different personalities, reading different books, getting things out of it. Like your interpretation and what you got out of Fable was amazing because it resonated with you so deeply. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, I see what she's talking about. I don't feel that because we're different people. One of the things I'm excited for you to read about in Bloodmarked is how well Tracy Dion describes mediumship and the experience of going to a historically significant location as someone who can see all of that. It's beautifully done. It's so accurate to experience, but I'm excited to hear if it's accurate to your experience. So that's
I'm super stoked. I'm really excited, or what I want to say with like the Legendborn Bloodmarked thing, which just since we're talking about it, when I feel the energy of the main character, she feels like the main character on the cover of the first one, not the cover of the second one.
Yeah.
It's a different artist. And so like that would be like the way her energy feels. But I really go off of energetic signature more than visual stuff because I do have a decent amount of clairvoyance, but it's not my strongest of my clairs. And I think that's why I don't focus so much on their images. Certain characters, you might relate with this one. Sazed in Mistborn. I can see him super duper clearly.
Super clear. Down to like the shoes.
Yeah, I can see him super duper clearly. Vin, even though she's the main character, I struggle seeing her even now because I feel her so concretely. I just couldn't imagine what she looks like. So for us, we compare feeling more than we compare images. But this is a great question. So thank you for asking. But we do talk about the feelings of characters all the time. House in the Cerulean Sea, I have scoured to find character art that represents how clearly I see them in my head. And I've found a couple, but it's been a mission. I can see Talia the clearest, but that's Linus is still vague.
Arthur Linus is super vague for me. Arthur is a little bit clearer for me, but not very. Like just hair color and glasses to me. So, and
that's not this is not to say that the descriptions are bad. They're not. The descriptions of characters are vivid and beautiful,
like
and I love it.
Supersede physical.
But I feel them more. The most visceral, like people talk about this all the time when it comes to Court of Thorns and Roses series, because that's something that people really, really, really want to see, and then people really struggle to see. And so that's that sort of energy.
I couldn't resonate with the characters as well. Yeah.
Anyway, we are running out of time, but thank you all so much for being here. This is a happy bookend. Yeah.
One thing, if you are going to Convocation in Detroit, February 23rd through the 26th, I am speaking there. So if you are someone who will be in Detroit, February 23rd through the 26th, and you are going to the Convocation convention or conference, let's see each other there, because that'd be super fun. And I will be doing a talk, of course, on the magic of using stories and astrology and all those wonderful things.
Yes, go see Krista.
Yes, please.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here, for listening. We so deeply appreciate you. And for our patrons, thank you, especially extra. Please join our Patreon. Also, we do have we're able to open up one more spot for our Greece trip and 2 more spots for our Ireland trip. So if you want to come with us either to Greece, where we're going to channel the Greek gods, and we're going to do a lot of like historical channeling and apply that to your own healing. It's an ancient wisdom retreat. It's going to be super fun. I guarantee you've never been to a retreat like this before, ever. No one else has even, like, they asked us to build itineraries for these types of retreats because they're so unique. We did it. So absolutely, we would love to have you on that one. We literally have only 1 spot we were able to open up. But for the Ireland, we were able to open up 2. It's a more writer-based retreat. We're actually going to go look at like the homes of some of the most famous, powerful writers ever to come out of Ireland. We're going to go all the way across the country. We're going to channel Fae. It's going to be super magical. The information to join either of those is just by Googling Emily and KristaLyn Greece, Emily and KristaLyn Ireland. It'll pop up. I believe I have the Ireland one on my link tree, and you can go to Greece from there as well. So just to throw that in there, we hope that you have a wonderful time now that Uranus is stationed direct, and that you go make some magic.
That was perfect on my end. Oh my gosh.
I was like, that one was shit. Okay, bye.